Back to ranking members recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said in my opening statement, political violence is a scourge and entirely unacceptable, no matter the source or the target. Last October, a far-right conspiracy theorist broke into Nancy Pelosi's home and bludgeoned her husband. Prominent Republicans mocked the attack and promoted conspiracy theories about it. Last August, an armed Utah man who threatened to kill President Biden was killed as FBI agents attempted to serve a warrant on him hours before President Biden landed in his state. Some on the right claimed that the man was simply a, quote, Second Amendment enthusiast. In recent weeks and months, those on the right have repeatedly called for, quote, civil war, with an Ohio state senator saying that if Republicans lose the election, quote, it's going to take a civil war to save the country, and it will be saved. The president of the Heritage Foundation likewise said that, quote, we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be, close quote. Director Wray, it's obviously important that we respect First Amendment protections, but there is clearly a point at which some violent rhetoric crosses over into threats of violence or leads to actual violence. Could you describe how the FBI looks at this relationship between rhetoric and action and what you are seeing around the country?
So I appreciate the question, and this is an issue that I've been talking about for some time. In our view, there is a right way and a wrong way under the First Amendment to express your views, no matter how passionate or even angry you are. And violence and threats of violence is not the right way. And we don't care what you're upset about or who you're upset with. When, from the FBI's perspective, when it turns to violence and threats of violence, that's when we have to draw the line. That's when we get engaged. And there is an alarming phenomenon that we've seen over the last several years of that kind of passion and heated rhetoric turning into actual violence and threats of violence. We've seen it against public officials of all sorts. We've seen it against law enforcement. The number of officers shot and killed in the line of duty in this country is, frankly, outrageous and alarming. And I know that because every time an officer is shot and killed anywhere in this country, since the day I started as FBI director, I personally call the chief or the sheriff to express my condolences and to talk to them about the victim's family. And the number of those shootings that are ambush-related, meaning somebody is targeting law enforcement because they're law enforcement, is particularly alarming. I have made around 400 of those phone calls. It's almost every 5 days that a law enforcement officer is killed in the line of duty. And that is an example of the kind of ways in which passions and heated rhetoric can bubble over into violence.
Thank you. Members of Congress, their families, and their staffs have witnessed an alarming rise in threats against them. I appreciate the work your agency has done to investigate and address these threats, but I'm concerned that we do not seem to be stemming the tide. What is the FBI doing to ensure that members of Congress, their families, and their staffs are safe?
So we have a very close relationship with the Capitol Police, and we have members of the Capitol Police, for example, who are on some of our task forces. We share intelligence information about things that we're seeing, trends that we're seeing with Capitol Police and others in law enforcement. Obviously, if we have specific information about an effort to target a member of Congress, then we're getting with Capitol Police in a much more specific way. But those are some of the things that we're doing.
Thank you. Now, Director, your office is leading the investigation into the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Republicans in Congress, including members of this committee, have repeatedly called for defunding the FBI. What impact would defunding or even just limiting your funding have on the FBI's ability to conduct this and other investigations?
So I understand that there are heated views, opinions about us, just like there are about every institution in today's America, but cutting our funding is incredibly short-sighted, and the people it really hurts are state and local law enforcement and the American people we're all sworn to protect.
Thank you. During my remaining time, I want to turn to a different matter. In recent days, Republican members of Congress have attacked presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris as a, quote, DEI candidate, which presumably is code for women and person of color. It's not a new theme for them. In May, Chairman Jordan wrote to you claiming that because of DEI initiatives, the FBI is no longer hiring, quote, the best and brightest candidates to fill the position of special agent. With my remaining time, Director Wray, can you please answer the following questions? Is it true that hiring women and people of color means that FBI is no longer hiring the best and the brightest to serve as law enforcement officers? Is there any evidence that women and people of color are less effective in law enforcement roles? And what message does it send to prospective applicants when their leaders demean them and make judgments about them based solely on their race or gender?
Witness may respond.
So any notion that we have lowered our standards, our hiring standards, is just not accurate. In fact, our standards are as competitive and selective as ever. We have tens of thousands of people applying, and our selection rate is about 3.1%, which is more selective than just about any university in the country. And most of our applicants, I think something like 50% of them are coming from military or law enforcement backgrounds. About 50% of them also have advanced degrees. The average age is around 31, which means they're bringing a wealth of personal and professional experience when they arrive. And to suggest that those people, because of efforts related to diversity or anything like that, are less qualified, frankly, is not at all consistent with what I see, having visited all of our field offices and seen these young people in action, and I think is an insult to those hardworking men and women who've signed up to dedicate their lives for this country.
Thank you, Director. I yield back.